Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Randy Byrd for the Monday coaching call by Randy Byrd. I'm really excited to bring this to you today. I wish my trainings and stuff got the amount of followers and listeners that some of these podcasts we're going to look at today. I'm going to shock you with some stats on podcasts as we progress. At least I was shocked. But ultimately, I want to give you some tangible things to take away with today. How to get started on podcasts, some of the platforms, some of the do's and don'ts, if you will. Also, if you just mute yourself, it will not pull up your name and stuff if you make noise there. I'll go ahead and change it to gallery. But if you go ahead and mute yourself, I can mute you if you forget as you're going. So when we look at podcasts, we'll talk about some of the things to get a podcast. What's the benefits? What's the upsides and downsides of that? And then ultimately, some of the podcasts that are doing very, very well, and some of the interesting facts about podcasts. We'll talk a little bit about equipment, but more importantly, I want to give you the tools that you could launch and get going on today if you don't do podcasts regularly. I've had a podcast for a few years now. I think we're just a whisker under 100 shows on there. Some are massive and really, really good, like world-class authors, guys that climbed Mount Everest. Matter of fact, all 7 summits, Bo Parfait, and just some other really, really powerful speakers. And I've got some that I've done with new clients and new agents. So it really is all things considering. There's a lot of ways to do this. So number one, as we progress, what is a podcast, right? What is a podcast? I'd love your opinion. What, in your opinion, is a podcast? This is interactive, by the way. What's a podcast to you? Love Joe Rogan. We're going to talk. He's number one in the world. Cat out of the bag. 11 million visitors per episode. 11 million per episode. That is just incredible, right? But come on, what's a podcast to you? Is it Joe Rogan? Is it you can't do it because you're not Joe Rogan? Or what does that look like for you? I'll look at chat as well for you,
I
shy
think it's
ones.
basically someone that specializes in something and puts their word out to benefit others.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing, Melissa. And although it's generic, right? You think about that. Like Andy Frisella is one of my favorites. When I did 75 Hard twice, I listened to him every day and you can't not be not pumped up when listening to him. But to answer your question, you're right. It's to get a message to somebody, right? The average listener across all podcasts listen to 6.5 hours a week of podcasts. That's almost a full workday. They're consuming this. I remember my assistant, a couple of assistants ago, she would listen to true crimes all day long. And she would I'd say, hey, can you focus when you're doing listening to all this stuff? She goes, I can't focus without it. It's like this in the background. She's listening, but it's like, I don't understand it. Sometimes music even bugs me when I'm trying to get in a flow state in business, but I just remember her doing that. And then when I started looking at these statistics, I was blown away by some of this. Um, let's jump right into this. Check this out. Number one in the world, we let the cat out of the bag. It's Joe Rogan. 11 million visitors or listeners per episode. Not like he's got 11 million friends. He's got 11 million per episode listening to his program as an average. He's got some that had 40 million. He's got some smaller, but the average number for him is 11 million listeners per episode. And what really surprised me, to be honest, is number two. Number two kind of surprised me. Number two, anybody know what it is right off the top of their head without Googling it and cheating? It's Crime Junkie. It's exactly what she used to listen to. It's Crime Junkies, the number two with almost 6 million average listeners per episode, 5.9 million listeners. And then you're never going to believe I didn't go through every one. Well, I have them right in front of me. The Daily's number 3, This American Life's number 4, Morbid, a true crime podcast, is number 5. So you have Crime Junkie number 2, Morbid number 5, number 6, The Ben Shapiro Show. Shocked. I didn't know that. I'm a Ben fan, but I didn't know he had that big. I've never listened to his podcast. Number 7, Stuff You Should Know. Number 8, I didn't do this. Number 8, call her daddy. That's what I did. I went, call her daddy. I'm like, what does that mean? What are we doing? And it's actually, I looked it up. It's a comedy show. It's called Call Her Daddy. And it's number 8 in the world with like 2 million average listeners per episode. Never heard of it. I'm very curious now, right? Now I'm morbidly curious, like number 5. So number 9, office ladies. I'm not making this up. Number 9, office ladies. Don't know what it means, but it's probably, lady stuff. And number 10, my favorite, murder. So you see the theme here in the top 10 in the world. Crime Junkie, This American Life, morbid true crime, and my favorite, murder are 5 of the top 10. That freaking blew me away. I got to be honest. I'm like, that trips me out. But now I understand that pool of people significant that's listening to things like true crime. And I used to ask her, what encourages you? What inspires you? And she goes, I just love quietly in the background. You're listening to these stories, right? And you're listening to this. Not my deal, right? Joe Rogan, I love. Joe Rogan's controversial. He is sometimes even caustic, depending on what's going on with his people. He calls it like it is. He's fired people for bad mouthing him, and he doesn't let people decide what's going to be on his show, right? You heard him killing sponsors that told him, hey, you can't say that on my show or we're going to have a problem, right? And now he has an exclusive with Spotify. So he has an exclusive with Spotify. And it's just amazing to me that the power that social media has really made these into almost demigods. It's true, right? So now that we talked about that, what is a podcast? A podcast is something for you to get your message out. Think about this. If you have a unique selling proposition, if you have a unique value proposition, right? We call it UVP in the real estate business. But if you have a position, maybe I remember this gal up in Portland did floating homes. That's very specific niche, right? That's something that is popular up there in this particular floating home neighborhood. You could be luxury. Obviously, it's a crowded space, even in the real estate luxury space. But maybe it's like Kyler. He does a lot of ranch properties and he does a lot of things all focused on those kind of things, right? It could be Anna Marie's in Hawaii, right? It could be anything. It could be Kristen is literally, I did a kitchen remodel. It was a couple $100,000 winery back in the day, but she was the knitting champion of the world. I don't know what that is, like quilts, right? Quilt knitting champion of the world, like multiple times. That means nothing to me as a contractor guy, but it sounds cool. It's a big deal in that environment, in that circle, right? The quilt knitting champion quilter of the universe. You're not laughing. Come on, that's a big deal. But the point is, she could have a podcast and have millions of people from around the world listening to her because it's a specific niche of what she's operating in. And that could lend to more quilt sales. That could lend to an entrepreneur enterprise. That could be selling things. It could be opening up shops for quilts. It could be coaching and speaking. There's a million things, right? That's the value of a podcast in terms of reach. As long as you're digging a 10-foot deep hole and not 10 1-foot holes in your podcasting message. I've been a little guilty of that. Mine is entrepreneur, so it's called Like a Boss. So everybody I interview is like entrepreneurs and CEOs and businesses and things. And that specific is a niche to me, but it still may be too broad. It still may be a red ocean as they speak about opportunities to identify yourself, right? So when we look at this, let's start at the beginning process of this. There's several platforms. The one I use is Spreaker. I'm not paid for this. It doesn't matter to me. So I'm just going to put this in there. But it's www.Spreaker, like a speaker with an R in it, Spreaker.com. When I looked at it, it seemed very simple. It was very inexpensive. I've had it for years now. So now I don't know exactly how many episodes on it. I will pull up that so I can share my thing with you, but that's not what this training is about today. It's about opening your mind of what you may have an opportunity to start a podcast on your own end, right? Is it in the coaching space? Is it in a specific area? What is it that you're interested to talk about? I will tell you a couple easy ones is just to do an interview format, and you could focus in your real estate space. Think about how many people you can line up to do podcasts if you called title companies and asked them about what their recent changes. Maybe not super sexy, but what about attorneys, their view on the NAR lawsuits and all that stuff? What about people that are in NAR if they'll give you an interview? What about city council about what's going on in your areas? What about top agents from around the country? By the way, that's a great way to make connections with top agents. They say, I'd love to have you on my podcast. Been really successful with that. They love to talk about themselves. Let's be honest. They love to be highlighted and put into that particular content of an interview process about how they made it and how they became successful. One of my somewhat diabolical plans in this is I want to make them look as good as possible so they could repurpose this to their people. Because if it does a good job and it's promoting them and they're getting to talk about themselves in a way they can't otherwise, you can't brag about yourself if you're a rock star like Pete. You can't go, Pete is the greatest. Look at me. I'm a coach to the stars. I do all these things. I have all these wins in life. You can't do that and edify yourself properly. But I can. I could go, Pete, you're a humble, gracious human being, but I want you to brag on yourself in the next 60 seconds. Let's go live right now, Pete. Do it for me. Just play with me. I want you to brag on yourself for the next 60 seconds, and I want you to make it gushy and ooshy and like, I want you to brag. I'm begging you and asking you to brag. Tell me about your background. 60 seconds.
So I never went to school. I actually went into my family business when I was 18. I've now been a part of 12 different businesses, some wildly successful, some major failures. But it's given me a lot of real life experience to help franchise and business owners expand their enterprises. And that's where I focus in on the commercial real estate spaces, business brokerage, and helping people escape the 9 to 5 and buy their first business.
And you have a ton of coaching wins, ton of coaching clients that have reached incredible milestones because of your coaching toolage and direction, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Why didn't you bring that up, Pete?
Because I don't like talking about that.
Ah, weird. Isn't you see his body language and everything? It's not comfortable to talk about all this. But that's the power of a podcast. I can get that out of Pete, making him look good during the process, which you are looking good, right? You're a humble, you're a servant personality and human being. But that's some of the challenges when we get on this side and we're trying to say we are the greatest, right? But
Yep.
so imagine even people in your organization, people in your teams, people in your family, people in your, you could highlight people that are doing good things and make it very interesting to the listener, right? How-tos are super important, super valuable. You can interview contractors and you've never hammered a nail in your life. And you can interview contractors on purpose every single week saying, what are the ins and outs of the construction business? I'm interested. I'm curious. I want to provide value to other contractors. What are some secrets? What are some weird things that are happening? It's just so easy to think about these topics on and on and on, right? So as far as platforms, Spreaker is my favorite platform. As far as utility equipment, you need a camera on your computer, preferably not the one built in. You can buy a camera online. I use the Nexi Go. It's Nexigo 4K, and it was under 200 bucks. So I'm going to put that in there as well in chat so you see it. Mine is, I got my mic, Nexigo 4K. All right. Under 200 bucks. It was an upgrade for me. The other one I had forever was 49 bucks. And looking back, my videos were just fine. $49 for a really decent camera, especially now. And, you know, I would venture in saying getting the 4K is better, and you could always dumb it down because sometimes 4Ks, you see too many pores in my face sometimes, right? If the cameras are so good nowadays. But you don't need any special equipment for this. As you progress, like in my journey, the next step for me is a camera that is high def and it's going to blur the background. They have special optical lenses. They have all these things that are now available. Sony, I think 63 is a good model for podcasting. That's the next step for me. You're looking at a couple grand for camera and lenses. That's 49 bucks, right? Microphone, really important. You're going to see I'm using a Blue Yeti. My Blue Yeti, I got from Fred Meyer, which I didn't even know they carried electronics, right? I was in there getting soup and they had electronics and I looked and they had this for 99 bucks. You can get it on Amazon just as easy, super simple. I've got a little foam top on the top. You can see that's what it looks like. I've got this little foam top. It serves as like a spit mic or It keeps you from pronouncing the P's really sharp. And one of these things will help a lot. You have the ones that are in front of you, don't know what they're called. I think they're called spit something, like a spit funnel, spit mic, spit something. And then you have just some kind of foam to knock down the high P's and those things in your podcast. And you'll sound amazing. You can also get one of the lapel pins, very inexpensive. I've got a couple of them. Just Amazon and Google that as well. But the lapel pins, then you could use your camera phone, which actually has a 4K camera in this. You could take almost cinema quality photos and video with this. And you absolutely can do a podcast with that if you're on the run. One of the things that we're going to with the next step here locally is we're focused on localized real estate, Oregon Luxury Group. We're really looking at the hub of that and then how we can work outside of that. And one of the things I want to do is interview all the people that are pertinent in town, and restaurants and city council and, the police chief and the school superintendent, and just make it hyper local. And you could do this through Zoom, by the way. You don't need to go out with them and put on a lapel pin and do all these things. Zoom is an amazing platform for recording it. And what I've moved to recently that I'm absolutely in love with is StreamYard. StreamYard does amazing things very simply and allows you to do pre-recorded things. It allows you to edit and do a lot of editing, and you could have streamers running across the screen and all kinds of things with StreamYard. But you're familiar with Zoom. We'll do another StreamYard training down the road because I think we could do 30 minutes on StreamYard alone, just some of the tools. But that is a paid program. Most of you have Zoom already. You could do a very quality Zoom. You could do virtual backgrounds. You could do all these things. And then you literally just put it on your computer, upload it into Spreaker, and it's done. It's automatic. There's also a lot of AI now that will take that video and crunch it like Opus One or Opus Pro. You could put that Zoom into there and make all these social media posts from that podcast. You can highlight this person in so many different ways. It's incredible. And then now there's another AI called Descript, and it literally takes what you say and puts it into script. But it not only does that, but if you say things like, hey, you have to have 3 action items to start your podcast. 1 is you need to buy the equipment, a camera phone and a speaker. Number 2 is you need good lighting, right? We haven't talked about. And number 3 is you just need some kind of content to follow or a place to post your thing to. I'm making this up, but if I did this through Descript, it will translate and transcript the whole thing, but then we'll break out action items I talked about. It will break it out. And if Melissa spoke and Randy spoke, it will break all that out for me. It's really, really incredible, right? So again, little tools along the way. Lighting, probably one of the most powerful things. The particular camera I have does very well in low lighting. So like without my side light on, it looks like this. With my main light on, I kind of balance it down so it's there. And then I have one of the big lights as well. Again, Amazon, $59. So everything I'm telling you, you could start literally, you could have a podcast show tomorrow for under $200, having nothing. You need a computer, right? But microphone, camera, a light, they sell these kits on Amazon. But it's really valuable to start doing this. And the reason it's valuable is because that content lives forever. It's not about trying to have 11 million viewers. It's about giving yourself another avenue to have meaningful conversations with people, giving you another avenue to touch more people. You could do a show on Granite Bay, for instance. Granite Bay is outside Sacramento. You could do a show on all things Granite Bay. And every week you're having a different person on for Granite Bay, right? So you can have the mayor, the police chief, the guy in charge of cities and parks, streets and maintenance. Why has this street been torn down so long? You get the guy out there. A sewer main, it's Monday, I can't talk. A sewer main breaks, it's in the news. You just call the public works department and say, hey, I'm not the news. I'm just a podcast person, but I want to get to know how sewers work. It gives you a chance to explain to the public what's underground we don't see, right? That could be totally intriguing if you're into that kind of stuff, right? Is this valuable for everybody so far? So what questions come up for you? I want to have a little Q&A time. What questions come up for you and or fears of starting your own podcast?
I'll jump in. That's always been my biggest thing that you touched on earlier is I'm always afraid that I always think I should go much more broader, and I'm afraid to go super niche. And then I know in my mind, in my heart, that I should go niche, but I always see myself going too broad. That's
We
what I
all
always.
want to be Joe Rogan, let's be honest,
Mhm.
right? Some of my best videos ever, my best podcasts have like 11 listeners. And then I got some that really I didn't even know what I was thinking about at the time. And they've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of views because it had some kind of catch or had some kind of, I have a lot of humor in my stuff. It's just how it is, right? I did a podcast. Thank you for sharing that, Pete, by the way. I think it's a great statement. We're going to talk about it. I did a podcast last week with the National Fidelity national title coach for the whole company. And she was amazing. It was a great interview. But the first thing she said is, what are the rules? I mean, what's your cussing rule? And I'm like, I mean, I kind of cuss like a sailor at times. I'm half hood, half holy, but you go wherever you want to go. And I said, just make sure that you feel good about it. Other than that, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Right. So she set a boundary, but it gave that kind of open liberation to go where we wanted to go with that. Right. And I said, by the way, before I started the podcast, I said, what's off limits? I'm willing to stay away from things for you. She goes, nothing. The deeper, the juicier for me. And I go, I love that because I'm the same way, man. I'm an open book. I think that's when you connect with people is when you dig open the onion instead of skimming over it when you know it's BS, right? So for me, it was a badass interview. We got to say shit a couple times, felt good about it, right? We already set the expectations. We knew who our audience was. My CRM won't even let me say but, B-U-T-T. It blocked out the words like I'm taking notes and it's got all these stars. And I'm like, it won't even let me say but. I'm totally being censored by my own system. But the reality is, if you've listened to Joe Rogan, the #1 podcast in the world, he doesn't give two shits about what he's saying, about what he's doing. That doesn't come, it's not available for you, by the way. I'm telling you right now, that's not you. You could start out that way saying, I want to be like Joe Rogan. I want to do that. But he's earned it. He's earned it. In the beginning, you have to think, I want to attract as many people that understands this concept to me without going hard line. I'm running people off, right? You're looking at running for digital mayor. When you're the digital mayor, just like in a real mayor, you're likely to be liked by 51, 52% of people and hated by 48. That's just part of politics. You got to get used to that. These podcasts might not be too far away. Follow your true passion and you'll be fine. Don't worry about what other people say. If you get a common theme that's running your podcast, you might just be appealing to the wrong person, right? If you start getting haters and haters or daters and daters and people think that you're just hot and I have this problem all the time. People just are just so attracted to my podcast, right? Bull crap. But the reality is your message could be, it could be going a direction that you're not intending to. But so for me, follow your passion, try to be, and don't try, be authentically you, because you're going to find your avatar of somebody that attracts to you. Your content, Pete, is amazing. It's not going to have value to X, right? Whether it's an agent or a coaching client or an entrepreneur or whatever it may be, it's not going to have value to that particular person.
I have a
But if you
question.
look at it from that perspective, then you're going to really, stay in your passion of your niche. Yes, Kyler.
Hey, I'm starting a podcast for Camo and Wind, our online hunting journal.
Yep.
And I was curious if I should do a separate like wildland property group podcast or if I should just go all in on the hunting, fishing, outdoor, and then like also say that I'm with Wildland Property Group. Does that make sense?
Totally. So tell me what your #1 objective of the podcast is and be as honest as you can.
For
Is it to
Camo
get
and Wind,
listings or listeners or sell hunting gear? What is I know you, so I know a little more, but
that
what
one's
would you say it is?
the biggest goal for that is like building that business.
Business or pleasure?
That one is for
If you got 10,000 hunting buddies, is that the objective of the show?
yes.
And no, you don't care about business.
Well, that is a business. So it goes hand in hand. And I thought about joining some archery clubs and then farming those rural areas as well.
Yeah, I understand now, Kyler. So in my opinion, if you're looking from an entrepreneur perspective, we don't even have to say it's just real estate. It could be like me. I have multiple companies, right? I'm a real estate, but I'm also in coaching, which is a subcategory of real estate, but I coach contractors, has nothing to do with real estate. I also like investing, has nothing to do with maybe the message on my real estate. But I can have a podcast that's ever encompassing and then break it into episodes that are specific to people. And you can categorize those within your podcast. So you could say the Kyler Wildland group, and then you could have real estate related stuff. You could have hunting related stuff, and that can go deep. That could have 400 episodes of that specific niche, but you're also having the cross benefit of marketing into your real estate group if that's your intent.
That's what I'm hoping is this happens.
Yeah, so that's why I asked, because I've got people that are like, no, real estate's over here, but my windsurfing is gospel. This is over here, right? And those two don't necessarily have to blend, right?
You can.
I'm a network marketer, right? I'm a talent scout. I'm always looking for people, and I want everything to be related to each other, everything. Right. So I wouldn't do flips if it didn't help me relate into this category. Now, if you have a true passion, like my passion was bow hunting. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I want to drive out there like a mouse. I want to walk around in the weeds, and I want to bow hunt. I can attach to other people that like that same thing very easily through that niche, but it's not helping me necessarily sell houses. But it could, right? So you see the blends opportunity wise.
Yeah, I think that blending is like the big opportunity, to be honest.
100%. I agree completely. Right. But you got to be clear in that messaging, though, when you're talking to your people, like, hey, I'm in this envelope of my passion, but this is my day job, right? You're not hiding away from that.
Okay, cool.
Good. I like it. Good question. And in the beginning, just fell forward. Just start doing episodes as stupid as they are, as corny as they are. I did my first video for real estate in 2007. There was no video back then. I was like on the cutting edge, and it was horrible. But that's how long I've been putting my face on camera. And it's kind of interesting to go back and look at that. If you go back to some of my channels and stuff, you go all the way back to the first thing, I was doing videos about real estate in 2007. And I was sitting there with the whole thing in the background and noise and the whole thing. Don't be afraid to be uncomfortable, and don't be afraid to fail forward through this, right? You're going to know what works and what doesn't. But show of hands, who's committed to a podcast? Who knows this would be good for their business? All right. Some maybes, that's cool too, right? And that was a question for you being committed. You could be curious. Who's curious about podcasts? See if it's worth doing. Okay, couple more hands.
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, not a question, but it's like what's stopping me is starting another thing when I have started so many things that I haven't finished, like video, that just adding more.
Yep. So you've got to look at your bandwidth of what you can do and find out what the ROI for it is, right? If the ROI is just to make you feel good or check off a list, it's probably could wait there. But if it's got an ROI in your business, which I think it does, by the way, and video, if you're not doing it, you are missing GCI because of it. I'm just being a coach right now, right? If you're not doing it, you're missing an opportunity because of it. A podcast is like an integral part into that. It's specific, but it could be, you could kill two birds with one stone. Anna Marie, what I would do if I started over and I was in your shoes, I would focus on once a week, a committed effort to do a video and take the audio to podcast. So just do a video talking about maybe the market, talk about the market in the Hawaiian Islands. And that's a sexy subject, right? And just call it the state of the islands real estate or something. And just continue doing consistent weekly. And it could be a 2.5 minutes. It could be 20 minutes. And you're just talking about what's going on in the real estate market in the islands. I would listen. That would be intriguing to me if it provided value. Right. And then, by the way, that audio, when you record in Zoom, it gives you a video and audio. It gives you video only, and it gives you audio only. It's just a checkbox to select which one. And you could download the audio one automatically into Spreaker. Take the video one automatically into Facebook, Instagram, all these things, right? Or even Opus Pro, and break it down even further. So that's how you could do one thing and leverage a couple other opportunities.
But I would start with the podcast and then turn it into videos, not the other
In
way.
your sake, I would do a video once a week on
Okay.
Zoom talking about the real estate happenings of Hawaii. And I would post that video onto my social media, and I would take the audio out and put it to a podcast and make that become your podcast. That's what I would do if I was coaching you and knew what I knew.
Thank you.
Right? Because now it's opened up so many other doors in those areas to start getting traction and to start breaking into other areas. And then again, just from a coach's perspective, you're talking about a little tiny outlier if you don't have Zoom and all these things already. And then you're talking about, you could easily do this in 30 minutes a week. 30 minutes a week. It just depends on how important it is to you. Okay. All right,
Cool.
everybody. Thank you for being here. You're going to see that I'm going to take this, I'm going to regurgitate this into Opus One. I'll put this into the podcast even. I don't know if it's a great podcast episode, maybe. But the clips and all the information are great for Opus and video and social media and short form and shorts and all these things. All right, you guys, ladies, gentlemen, Merry Christmas to you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I won't see you again till after
Okay.
Christmas. We're not on, obviously. Next week is Christmas, so Merry Christmas. And then the next week is New Year's. So it'll be a few weeks before you see me again, but I wish you the best. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and thank you for being here. I appreciate it. All right, everybody.
Holidays.
Have a
Thank you,
great
thank
day.
you.
Thanks for being here.
Happy holidays.
Bye
Merry
for now.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.